Welcome to the House Bill 3 and 30 series. This segment will address the high school graduation requirement financial aid application. Today we'll walk through the new high school graduation requirements, including options for students to either complete the free application for federal student aid, the Texas application for state financial aid, or receive an exemption through opting out. We'll also walk through new reporting requirements for school districts and an advisory committee that will advise rules and timelines for this new requirement. My name is Monica Martinez. I'm the Associate Commissioner for Standards and Support Services, and joining me today is Jessica Snyder, our Special Projects Director in the Curriculum Division. Another key staff member to be aware of is Alexis Bosserman, who is the Beyond Grad Director. The Texas Commission on Public School Finance identified that many students are not applying for financial aid, and as a result, not as many students are enrolling in college as we would like in Texas. We know from smaller pilot programs in the state that targeted support to students can increase the number of students who complete the FAFSA or the TASFA by over 60%. House Bill 3 creates a new graduation requirement. This requirement doesn't begin until the 2021-2022 school year, at which time each student will be required to either complete and submit a FAFSA, complete and submit a TASFA, or submit a signed opt-out form. House Bill 3 also requires TEA to establish and convene an advisory committee. House Bill 3 requires the Commissioner of Education to adopt administrative rules. We anticipate that those administrative rules will define what successful completion of the FAFSA or TAFSA will be in order for a student to meet the graduation requirement. Additionally, criteria for one of the exception options will be defined in the rules. We anticipate that TEA will provide support in a variety of ways, including developing and making available a standard notification for students and parents that explains the new requirement, an approved opt-out form that families can use to complete an exception, as well as a Texas toolkit developed in coordination with the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to help counselors and administrators to support students. We anticipate that the Commissioner will also adopt rules for school district requirements. Because districts are already required to provide students with notification of the automatic college admission requirement when a student first begins taking courses for high school graduation, we anticipate that the new administrative rule will require that this additional information on the financial aid application will be provided at the same time as the notification of automatic college admission. Districts and charter schools will also be required to report the number of students who have completed either the FAFSA or TASFA or who have received an exception. TEA has also recommended that the State Board of Education amend its rules to provide additional support and guidance for this new graduation requirement. The SBOE is expected to adopt amendments to the rules in early 2021 to add the financial aid application to the high school graduation requirements in Chapter 74. The SBOE is also expected to include language in the rule that would require documentation of the completion of the financial aid application or the exception on a student's transcript. Jessica will now walk you through the FAFSA requirements.
FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. It's completed by both prospective and continuing college students for aid for the upcoming academic year. The financial information in the application informs students' eligibility for federal and state financial aid. How to apply. To complete the FAFSA, most students will log in to fafsa.gov and complete the application online. However, students may also apply by using an online mobile app or completing and mailing in a hard copy. Getting started. To get started, students will need to collect or ensure they have access to the necessary documentation and financial information for the application. To begin an online application, the student will need to create a Federal Student Aid or FSA ID. This is a requirement for the online application only. The FSA ID is a username and password that gives students and parents access to the online system for FAFSA. It's used to confirm an individual's identity and serves as a legal electronic signature. Parents and students, if applicable, will also need to have filed their income tax returns for the year prior to filing the FAFSA. For example, a high school senior applying in October of 2021 for the 2022-2023 FAFSA cycle will need tax returns from 2020. Once the initial steps are done, the student will complete the application. The online application can be completed over more than one session by saving the information and logging back in later with the FSA ID. The FAFSA application takes USDE 3 days to 5 days to process. Once a student has completed and submitted the application, they should check the student's account on FAFSA.gov after the 3 to 5 day window. This is to confirm the status of the application. The student's account will indicate whether the application was successfully processed, if the application was rejected, or if there are corrections or additional information needed. Once the account indicates that the application has been successfully processed, the student has completed the Texas graduation requirement to complete a financial aid application. Through this process, the Federal Student Aid Office forwards the student's financial aid information to the institutions of higher education that the student selected in their application. It's important to note, however, that there may be additional steps with the individual IHE to finalize and receive a financial aid package, even though the FAFSA has been completed. Let's review some of the documents or information students will need to access in order to apply. The Social Security number is a requirement for both students and parents to apply online. However, a student or parent's lack of a Social Security number does not disqualify the student from eligibility for aid, and the application can be submitted by mail. If the student has a driver's license, that number is entered. An alien registration number may also be entered if the student is not a U.S. citizen but is eligible for federal financial aid. The financial information needed for the application includes federal tax information and records of untaxed income and personal assets. Next, we'll review some key dates for FAFSA. FAFSA forms are posted and the electronic application opens October 1 of each year. January 15th is the deadline for priority consideration for most four-year Texas institutions of higher ed, also referred to as IHEs. Although not all aid is subject to these timelines, students are encouraged to apply early to improve their chances of getting the best financial aid package possible. To meet the graduation requirement, a student must only apply for financial aid the year they plan to graduate. However, it's important to note that students must submit a FAFSA every subsequent year while in college to be considered for federal student aid for the upcoming academic year. The chart on the right outlines a sample timeline for key dates during the 2021-2022 school year. For tax returns, this timeline is often referred to as prior because the federal financial aid is based on tax returns from 2 years before the academic year to which the aid is actually applied. 2020 taxes were entered to determine financial aid for 2022 when the student enters the IHE. USDE provides several resources and direct support by phone and online to assist students with completing the FAFSA. There's a toolkit, and students can call or log in to chat directly with a student financial aid advisor. Additionally, there are state programs that currently provide FAFSA resources for Texas counselors. There are also a number of existing networks of support through local programs and foundations, chambers of commerce, and nonprofit organizations. Financial aid offices and officers at IHEs also work directly with students and parents to assist with completing the FAFSA. TEA will also develop additional materials and resources to support districts in successful implementation of the financial aid application graduation requirement. To provide this support, TEA will form a new team dedicated to counselor, advisor, and student supports. We'll partner with Texas OnCourse and the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to provide and promote more free online training for districts. The TEA Toolkit will provide districts with strategies to engage and recruit local community partners to assist students and their families with the completion of the FAFSA. As a key takeaway, please note that these new resources to supplement the implementation of the financial aid graduation requirement will be made available to counselors and schools in the fall of 2020. As a graduation requirement, counselors will need to track and monitor student completion of the requirement. For FAFSA, counselors are able to do this through the Apply Texas Counselor Suite. The Apply Texas Counselor Suite is an online platform hosted by UT Austin through an MOU with USDE and the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. It provides student-level data about FAFSA submissions and completions. Through the Counselor Suite, counselors have access to real-time information about the status of students' FAFSA applications. In the suite, counselors can see which of their students have completed the application in addition to students have submitted the application, but who may have additional steps to complete or need assistance. To access the Apply Texas Counselor Suite, districts are required to enter into an MOU with the Texas Higher Education Board, and counselors must register for an account. The MOU process is coordinated through the ISD's ESC. TEA will be exploring whether this process may be streamlined in the future, but in the interim, districts should begin looking into the MOU now if they do not already have one in place. TASFA. Students who are not eligible for federal financial aid may submit the TASFA. The Texas application for state financial aid, or TASFA, is available for students who are classified as Texas residents but who are not eligible for federal financial aid. These programs are administered directly by Texas IHEs. In order to meet the state graduation requirement, students who are not eligible for aid through the FAFSA must either complete the TASFA or complete the process to opt out of the requirement. In addition to the new graduation requirement in House Bill 3, the 86th Texas Legislature also adopted legislation, House Bill 2140, that requires the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to adopt procedures that will allow students to complete and submit TASFA forms by electronic submission. This common electronic process must be available beginning for applications submitted for the 2022-2023 academic year. It requires an advisory committee to develop recommendations for the electronic process, and TEA will be working with the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to coordinate the requirements related to TASFA and the electronic form. Completing TASFA. Currently, there is a general TASFA application that some Texas IHEs use. It does not include an electronic submission process. The form is available on the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board website, and it collects similar financial information to what is collected by the FAFSA. However, IHEs may use their own form, and the submission process may also vary by IHE. Key dates for TASFA are similar to dates for FAFSA. What's important to note again is that the submission process will likely vary by IHE, which can also include key dates and deadlines. It's important that students check directly with the schools to which they plan to apply for more information. Many of the state and local programs and organizations that provide resources and support for completing the FAFSA also assist counselors, students, and parents with TASFA. The key takeaway we want to highlight about local resources is that districts should begin exploring opportunities to partner with these state and local entities now. The resources TEA is developing will also include strategies for identifying these community partners and engaging in these collaborative partnerships to provide the students and families who need assistance with support. Opting out. Students may also receive an exception from the new graduation requirement by opting out. A student may opt out of the financial aid graduation requirement in one of the following ways. The student's parent or guardian may submit a signed form. If the student is 18 or older, the student may submit the form, or a school counselor may authorize the student to decline to complete and submit the application. For the opt-out option, TEA will provide the approved opt-out form that's required by law in spring of 2021. The form will be provided in English, Spanish, and other common languages in Texas schools. It is important to note that districts and charter schools will need to collect and manage opt-out data locally. This information must be reported annually in the Public Education Information Management System in the Texas Student Data System, or TSDS PINS. For our next frequently asked question, How will TEA approve opt-out forms? TEA will not approve forms submitted by school districts. TEA will develop and make available on the TEA website prior to the start of the 21-22 school year an opt-out form. And finally, reporting requirements. House Bill 3 requires districts and charter schools to report the number of students who submitted and completed a financial aid application or who received an exception by opting out. To report this information, districts will be required to report the financial aid application graduation requirement in TSDS PEIMS for each student. A new data element and code table will be added in TSDS PEIMS for the graduate record beginning with the 2022-2023 school year. This is just an example of the financial aid application indicator. The table includes two codes, one to indicate an application was successfully completed, which would apply to completion of a FAFSA or a TASFA, and a second code indicates that an exception was filed through the opt-out option. Districts will also need to indicate that the graduation requirement has been met on the high school transcript. An additional data element will be added to TREX that will enable districts to indicate the month and year that the student completed the graduation requirement beginning with the 2021-2022 school year. Let's review the timeline for reporting requirements. Seniors are required to complete a financial aid application or opt out as a graduation requirement beginning in 2021-2022. During the 21-2022 school year, counselors will begin tracking financial aid application completion information in order to monitor and document the completion of the requirement, to indicate the date the graduation requirement was met on the high school transcript, and to capture the information about the method of which the student met the requirement, whether they completed an application or opted out, for future reporting in PEIMS. In May or June of that school year, 2022, transcripts for the class of 2022 will include a date met field for the financial aid application. This will demonstrate that the student has met the graduation requirement. In 2022-2023, districts will report graduate data for the class of 2022, including the financial aid application indicator. This chart outlines the data collection and reporting that will occur during the school year in which students are completing their financial applications and the reporting of that data to TEA the following school year in the fall on the graduate report. Next steps. TEA is exploring options with the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to streamline these data collection systems for monitoring FAFSA information. We'll also work with the Higher Ed Coordinating Board to coordinate reporting requirements related to TASFA. The key takeaway for reporting requirements is that districts will enter financial aid application data in their local student information systems, beginning with students enrolled in 12th grade during the 2021-2022 school year. In 2022-2023, districts will begin reporting financial aid application completion data in TSDS PEIMS on the graduate record in the fall for submission 1. Next, I'll turn things back over to Monica, who will review the advisory committee requirement and some important next steps and timelines.
TEA will implement this new House Bill 3 requirement with advice and recommendations from an advisory committee that will include school counselors, school administrators, and other stakeholders who represent the needs of interested students. We anticipate that the advisory committee will meet 4 to 6 times between January and December of 2020. Anyone who's interested in applying to serve on this advisory committee can still apply to serve using the link below. The advisory committee is expected to make recommendations regarding information that districts must provide to students, as well as timelines for distribution of information and for completion of the new graduation requirement. We expect that recommendations will be completed by December of 2020 in order for TEA to submit a report to the legislature by January of 2021. This slide shows a highlight of the implementation timeline. We anticipate that TEA will convene the advisory committee beginning in January of 2020. In fall of 2020, resources will be available to support implementation. In January of 2021, TEA will report advisory committee recommendations to the Texas legislature, and at that time, we anticipate that rulemaking will begin. The State Board of Education is expected to adopt rules to amend their graduation requirements in January or February of 2021 for implementation in the 2021-2022 school year. In summer of 2021, the Commissioner's rules are expected to be adopted, also for implementation in the 2021-2022 school year. Beginning in school year 2021-22, the requirement applies for students who are enrolled as 12th graders in that school year. At that time, districts will also begin entering TREX data. Finally, in fall of 2022, districts will begin reporting new data elements in PEIMS for graduates. We'll now walk through some next steps for school districts and charter schools. So beginning now, we do recommend that districts start to identify local partners who can provide additional assistance. If an MOU is not already in place, districts should begin exploring initiating that MOU to access the Apply Texas Counselor Suite. Counselors are encouraged to take the Texas on-course modules on FAFSA and TASFA if they have not done so already. Districts are also encouraged to contact Education Service Centers for more information about local training resources, activities, and potential partners in the region. While the graduation requirement does not go into place for 2 more school years, it's important that districts build capacity now to ensure that all students are supported in successfully completing the requirement. Not immediately, but certainly prior to the start of the 2021-2022 school year, districts will need to adopt the TEA-developed form to authorize eligible exceptions. Districts will also need to develop instructions and information for students regarding completion of FAFSA or TASFA and options available for students who choose to opt out. It is also recommended that districts establish local timelines and plans for implementation so that they're ready to begin supporting students in 12th grade during the 2021-2022 school year. Districts should also consider an annual cycle for financial aid applications when establishing those local timelines. The most frequently asked question that the agency has received is regarding whether students must complete this new graduation requirement in order to graduate this year. Students who are seniors this year do not need to complete the new requirement. The requirement applies beginning with students who are enrolled in 12th grade during the 2021-2022 school year. This means there are still 2 school years, the 2019-2020 and the 2020-2021 school years, before the requirement must be implemented. That said, districts should begin planning now to be prepared for full implementation in the 2021-2022 school year. Stay tuned for the most up-to-date information from TEA on implementation of House Bill 3. Please send any questions regarding the financial aid application requirement or other House Bill 3 requirements to housebill3info@tea.texas.gov.